single thing about microcontroller chips is what is driving this whole wearables market. Now, you need to understand if you are a chip designer or a microcontroller designer, what is the kind of market that you're really kind of addressing. As a chip designer, there are a whole lot of companies today who make these microcontroller chips, from Microchip to Freescale to Texas Instruments to Silicon Labs, a whole lot of them. But you need to understand that they are trying to address this market where there are this whole bunch of products which are so diverse. And not only that, these products have their own unique requirements in terms of what functions they do. For example, one could be used as a watch to monitor, your activities. The other could be that it's an earbud that, lets you take some commands. So there are various use cases that people have, and all of these products come with different use cases. But it doesn't end there. These chips have to address finally these end consumers, and as I said before, these consumers have their own priorities, requirements, and style statements that you need to address. So as a chip designer, you need to understand that unlike, again, the previous markets that somebody would have worked for, it's such a diverse market that you need to think of yourself as designing something that will have to radiate into these multiple products and consumers from where you start. So that's really the challenge today these microcontroller companies will have to address, is about how do you radiate into this so much diverse market. So today's session is basically about trying to look at, from a chip manufacturer or a chip designer's point of view, how do you really address this market? What are some of those parameters that you can kind of think of in a very generic way and still be able to address this so many diverse requirements that you will come across. So what I'm going to present is initially a framework that will kind of make it a little more easy for you to address this market with a common set of attributes that can define this market. And how do you measure these attributes with a set of parameters? And with these attributes and parameters, what is the play that they have in a chip design process? And use that framework to kind of see how you need to think as a chip designer, and some of the examples in the industry of how people have used those design techniques to be able to create chips for the market. If you look at what are the top or the key attributes that define these wearables, we looked at all these segments of different products, different end users, and different functions. All of them can be defined, or attribute, can be easily classified if you just could address this market by looking at these 4 attributes. First thing is, it's all about getting personal. Wearables are all about personal statement. So you need to understand that when you look at this market, that whatever you design, whatever you're developing, has to be addressing this requirement of being personal. Second, it's about being always on. People would want to use this, for 24 hours. It's always going to be on. You could have, somebody's health being monitored throughout the 24 hours because you don't know, for example, it's a heart rate you're checking because, somebody could get a heart attack. So you need to be continuously monitoring to see where, check for any signs of any problems. So, more and more, some of these products will have to be always on. The third factor is about convenience. These products have to be very convenient for users. Unlike even a smartphone today, right? You have to do so many things to be able to get to a specific use case or do something. These wearables have to be so convenient that people will just use it and they won't even know that they're having this wearable on them. So that's a very key, again, a parameter about any of these wearables. And last is about being connected. These wearables have to be connected, and there are various angles to how it has to be connected, and we're going to slightly go into some of those details. So if you can look at these 4 attributes and then break it down into the parameters that you can measure these attributes with, then that's the kind of framework that we are looking at. Now let's look at each of these attributes and see what are the parameters that define these attributes. First thing is about personal. The first thing is it has to be personalizable. When we say it's personal, that means like your phone, you need to be able to choose what function it has to do. You need to be able to choose its configuration. You need to be able to choose, whether it's on or off, or a lot of things that So you need to be enable. You need to enable a lot of personalization with this product or with the chip that you would design. The second thing is about multifunctions. Today, unlike if you look at wearable, wearables is not a new technology or a new thing. You have had wearables like watches that my fathers used to wear. That's a wearable and it has been there. But if you remember the watch, it just did one function, which is to show you the date and the time. That's it. But today's wearables, people expect it to be multifunction. I need to be able to use that for jogging, but when I come back home, I should be able to see if my kid is awake, something like that. Or I'm using it in my car, I will also be able to use it in my office for something else. So the same device should be able to support multiple functions so that people can use the same wearable device in different ways. And the third aspect of personal is really the challenge of maintaining privacy and security of your information, because a lot of these wearables would be collecting a lot of data that's very personal. It could be about your health, it could be about a lot of things that you don't want it to be exposed or available to people outside. So when you are designing for this market, you have to understand how do you address the security and the privacy issues, right from a chip design level all the way to the product. The second attribute we talked about was convenience. The first parameter you have to look at there is human interface. Now, I specifically don't call it human-machine interface because, from a product point of view, you have to always look, this is a wearable, so you have to look at it as a human interface. So even buttons are not human-like interface. When I say human interface, you have to look at it as human-like interface, and not coming from a machine's angle. It's easy for a machine or a phone to put a button, but is this how a user works? May not be that. So you have to look at it like human-like interfaces to make it convenient. Whether it is gestures, whether it is eye movement, those are the kind of things that we need to be probably thinking of to address convenience. The second thing is called context awareness. That's exactly how humans or human brain works. If you, for example, see a fire and a smoke, right? You smell a smoke, somewhere you see that something is burning, but you also see that, there's fire. So you have a context that your brain processes that, yes, I am seeing fire, but I am also smelling something burning, maybe a rubber or something. So then using the context of the smell and your sensing of the fire, you kind of make judgments, you make decisions. So it's true about human brain that you get multiple sensor inputs, derive a context before you make a decision. So it's important that today's or tomorrow's wearables have to be able to give the context awareness to people. It's not just one sensor doing one job, but multiple sensors, and how do you combine or create a sensor fusion to kind of derive the context in which you're operating. And the third thing about convenience is also about being unobtrusive. You shouldn't even know that you are wearing a wearable. You shouldn't even know that it's on your body. It has to be very unobtrusive in terms of you're being aware of it, or you're somebody whom you work with is also aware of it, because it has to be like almost in the background. The third attribute is about always on. Again, here there are multiple parameters, but I picked up the top three. One is about continuous use. These devices will be continuously used. They will be continuously monitoring your body parameters, your environment, your physical, and maybe there are sensors tomorrow which will also monitor your emotional conditions. Whether are you stressed out? All of these parameters have to be continuously monitored, because there could be use cases that require you to continuously monitor, process that and create patterns or inputs that you will have to work with. For example, as a lifestyle, you start your day, you drive your car, you come to office, and you have a lot of meetings and you're stressed out. So your wearable should be able to tell you when you are stressed out and give you inputs to tell you, how to calm calm down and then go on with your work. So the second thing is about energy. Energy is about, people don't want to, come back home every night and charge this device. Today Samsung has a watch, and as I hear in the market, every day you want to come back and charge it. So people don't want to be able to charge this every day. They want this wearable to run for, many, many days. In fact, I don't want to charge at all if it's possible. The other aspect of energy is also about, wearables are very close to your body. So you cannot generate too much heat, because over a period of time, whether it's small heat, little heat, it will add up, accumulate, and then people will be able to perceive this heat. So you need to be able to manage energy dissipation, not just consumption, but also energy dissipation to make sure that people are able to comfortably wear this device. The third aspect of always on that you need to be aware of is it also has to be real time. That you need to be able to process sometimes data that's coming that you're sensing and able to give inputs in real time. The fourth attribute is about being connected. Of course, we talked about connectivity. Connectivity to your smartphone, for example. You need to be able to connect it to your smartphone easily. But it's not just that. You may have wearables from different companies that you have bought. You may want those wearables to talk to each other. You may have a watch, you may have a pendant, you may have an earbud. How do you enable them to talk to each other and maybe exchange some information that's useful and create some context awareness between themselves? So connectivity is not just about networking with connecting up to a host device, but also internetworking between different wearable devices. The second aspect of connectivity is really about social. Today everybody talks about LinkedIn. Social is the in thing, and if that is expected to continue, then you would also want your friends to know what you're doing now. How much is your activity levels today? What are you doing at this moment? All of those informations you may want it to be available either real time or be able to upload it and available for your friends, and then for your own analysis also. The third aspect is also about locationing. You should be able to have, like we said, about real time and being awareness of the context. You also need to be aware of your location. Location awareness is also becoming very important as a variable. For example, if you are entering a shop, a retail shop, then based on your parameters inside, then the variable should be able to tell you, for example, how do you navigate. Maybe there is an advertisement that comes on your variable to say, based on your social, parameters, it will tell you, this is the place where you need to go and buy, what you've come to buy. So you should be able to locate where you are. Either it's indoor or it could even be outdoor navigation. You may need to combine your GPS data to be able to say where you are. For example, you have an elderly person in your house who is suffering, say he's on a walk somewhere, he falls down, for example. He carries a stick. It's a variable. He is carrying a stick. So when he has a fall, the variable should be able to detect the fall, but then using GPS, it should be able to tell, this is where he's walking and, that's where he fell down, so you can come and pick him up. So it should be able to tell it automatically. So location awareness, whether it's indoor or outdoor, is again important as a connected. So what do you do now? You have all of these attributes, you have all of these parameters that you have to consider as a chip designer, and you need to be able to balance all of these to be able to kind of design the right kind of chips that will address this market. So how do you go about doing that? So you have to first of all understand that it's an interplay of all of these parameters. While some parameters may, kind of enable a specific design process, the other parameter may actually drive you in the opposite direction. So it's all about what compromises, what choices you make based on what parameters you really want to address and what attributes you are trying to really address. If you look at from a chip designer point of view, there are 4 different aspects of chip design that you have to address. And what you really need to do is to look at all of these parameters and attributes and see how each one of these parameters is trying to kind of drive your chip design process. The first thing that as a chip designer that you need to take care is about, or you need to look at, is about your compute power and storage. And there are different parameters. For example, if you look at locationing, you may get a GPS data, then you may have to process that data. So do you have enough compute power to be able to process this location information? We talked about contextual awareness. So that means you need to be able to collect data from different sensors and then combine them in a way that makes sense. So for example, how do you just take input from an image that you captured and a environment parameter like temperature that you measured, how do you combine them? What is the meaning that you extract? So that requires a lot of processing to be able to do. So if you look at what kind of markets you are trying to address, what kind of product you are trying to build, and what parameters are required for that market, then you'll be able to see what kind of compute power, what kind of storage that you need to bring in to your chip. The second parameter as a chip designer you look at is energy management. All of us today know about low power, and we bring in a lot of infrastructure into the chips to enable power save. And again, you need to look at what are the different parameters that will drive this. For example, continuous use. If your device is going to be in continuous use, then it means you need to build in a power management strategy that can take care of the user's patterns automatically. You don't want a user to say, I'm now going to be on, I'm now going to be off. He'll not use any buttons. So how do you know if a user is actually using, he's actually sensing? If he's not, then how do you automatically shut down? How do I know when he again wants to use it? How do I again bring it back? So how do I do an automatic power management, as I go along? So all of these parameters, not just infrastructure, but about how do you really overall manage power, is the second aspect of chip design that you have to consider. The third aspect is about human-machine interface, or HMI. Again, here you need to look at what kind of user interfaces you are trying to bring in. If you look at, for example, multifunction. So if you are looking at a device supporting voice commands as well as supporting temperature sensing, then you need to look at what kind of HMIs I need to build in. Do I need a speech codec? Do I need an ADC? What are the kind of sensors? And tomorrow you might have different kinds of touch interfaces. So do I need touch sensing? So you need to look at what are the different kinds of HMIs that you need to build in to your chip to be able to address some of these parameters and attributes. And lastly, you need to also look at connectivity in terms of what kind of short-range wireless connectivity, whether it is Bluetooth. But beyond short-range wireless, you also have to look at other technologies like GPS, or you need to bring in wireless LAN if you want to directly connect up to a, internet, without going through a smartphone. Then you may need a wireless LAN connectivity to kind of upload directly to the internet. So you need to look at all of these connectivity parameters and design your chip for that. So broadly, if you are a chip designer, to summarize, you need to look at the framework of what are the attributes, what are the different parameters that define these attributes, and then as you go into your chip design and address these four aspects of your chip design, you look at all of these aspects and attributes and see how each one kind of pulls in each direction and go about your chip design process. It may not be the way that today's chips do, but this is the framework that